Firstly, I was intrigued by this title. Plus, this is a new generation book and it has excellent reviews on Amazon. Not just that, later I got to know after I selected this book that one of the rich and young tech founders of a large company in the US gives this book to all his new employees as part of their welcome kit. So I thought there must be something in this book, and that's why I chose this book. But I must also admit, the moment I got to know that he gives this book to all his employees, somewhere in my mind I thought, oh, it'll be so nice if my books are also given to people, who are joining the organizations new. But later I got to know the reason why these books were given, and you'll have to wait till the end to know why this book has been given to all the new employees of the organization. Ben Horowitz, he's the author of this book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. So it's about building a business where there's no easy answers. When I started reading this book initially, actually I thought it was maybe a wrong choice because I didn't find it that interesting initially, but as I progressed, the book did seem a lot interesting. But to be honest, I think it's a mixed bag. A lot of gems, but also few things that were a little bit boring and also a little boastful too. So this book is more like an autobiography of his business career with traces from his personal life as well. So the main focus of this book is on the challenges and dilemmas faced by CEOs and founders on how to effectively run a company, and it's through the eyes of the author based on his experience. But while this book is mainly for founders and CEOs, I feel some of the points are also relevant for large corporates as well. So let me now highlight to you some of the things that stood out from the book. First thing, he says, CEOs should tell things as they are without any delusion because it enhances trust, more people to work together, and sets a good culture for the organization. In a weekly staff meeting, he asked a question to his team. What is it that we are not doing? He also reflects to say, what am I not doing as a CEO? So you see, those things actually provoke a lot of thoughts and therefore enables one to take actions. Talking about layoffs, now that there are so many layoffs, so he talks about the right way to lay off people. First he says, get it right in your head. Do not delay once you've decided that you want to lay off a person. Know why you're actually laying off the person. An important one, he says, train your managers to do the layoff and not your HR teams because you are the ones who've actually hired the people. And then as a CEO, you address the whole company about the layoffs. Be visible, be present, and engage with all your employees so that, there are no rumors and no grapevine about the layoff. And let people know that you actually appreciate their efforts. Another important one he says is, why should you train your people? He says people are the most important asset. And he gives a very good explanation on this. He says, if your people are being trained, let's say for 12 hours, but they're working for 20,000 hours in total, even if there is 1% improvement, what happens? The result of the 12 hours, and it gets so much better. So he's saying, for training for 12 hours, you actually get 1% of the 20,000, which is about 200 hours. And he says it's a great matter. And he says, train them in finance, negotiation, leadership, and so on, because that will enhance your company's competencies as well as improve the morale of your employees. Another interesting question the book addresses is it all right to hire from your friend's company or your competitors? He says, if you'll be shocked and horrified that let's say a company X hires several employees of yours, then you should not hire theirs. Another aspect is, normally it's very hard for big company executives to work in smaller companies because their jobs are completely different. Because the big companies, the big executives in the big companies are usually optimizing and running the existing business. And most of the business is actually incoming, so they don't really have to go and fetch business. Plus, he says there could be a rhythm and a skill mismatch. Another area he cautions, management debt, he says, is incurred when you make a convenient short-term management decision, but that has an expensive long-term consequence. And therefore, think twice before making any decision. Funny and interesting example of how politics actually happens in organizations. The CFO wanted to grow further as the COO, and therefore went and asked the CEO, what are the skills that he must demonstrate? The CEO encouraged him and asked him to pursue his dream, and also asked him to develop further skills and also be a strong leader with whom the other company executives will be wanting to work with. A week later, another executive panics and comes to the CEO, and he says, the CFO told him that he's being groomed by the CEO to become the next COO. So you see, look at the way how things can get manipulated and misinterpreted. So that's how politics happen in organizations. So to minimize the politics, he says, hire people with the right ambition. The ambition for the company's success, and therefore the executive success then becomes a byproduct of it. And also to build strict processes for potential political issues. Continuing, hiring senior people who've already been there and done that, and you're trying to do, can radically speed up your success. But he says in a startup, it's kind of like an athlete taking high performance enhancing drugs. And if it goes well, you go to new heights and scale well, else it starts degenerating. So he talks about Bill Campbell's, the $1 Trillion Coach, the book again I had reviewed a few months ago. So he talks about Bill Campbell's methodology. So he says, firstly, results against objectives. How well is the person managing the entire team? How innovative are they? What is their ability to work with peers? Are they effective in communication? Can they support and get things done? So he says, look out for these aspects and be clear on them. Another important aspect, why is building the right culture something so important? It says, having the right culture can help achieve goals. It preserves the key values of the company. And funny, if it will be tragic, because after all the huge efforts that you've taken to build a company, even if you don't feel like working in it, that's really tragic. So the core skills for running an organization, knowing what to do, and getting the company to do what you actually know. And he says you need both these characteristics to be a very good CEO. Great leaders create an environment where employees feel that the CEO actually cares more for the employees than the CEO cares for themselves. An interesting one, he says, this is called the Freaky Friday management technique. And it's based on this movie called Freaky Friday. Now in this movie, the mom and daughter are actually very frustrated with each other. They lack understanding on what's really happening with each other. And therefore, because of some magic, the roles actually get swapped. And they get inside each other's body. And that actually resulted in understanding the challenges of each other. This became an interesting way to solve interdepartmental conflicts. So when conflicting teams actually switch jobs, they appreciate the challenges of each other, and it results in the teams actually working together harmoniously. Now let me also share some noteworthy quotes from the book. To scale further, get a coach or a mentor and find someone who's been there, done that. If you're too busy to train your people, it's equivalent of being too hungry to eat. A company without a story is usually a company without a strategy. The most important attribute required by a CEO is leadership. Be careful with, he said this, she said that. Watch out for that. As a CEO, you must constantly evaluate the members of your team. The only thing that actually prepares you to run a company is actually running it. When letting go of people, you cannot help them to keep the job, but you can absolutely help them to keep their respect. Hard things are hard because there are no easy recipes. So one very nice aspect of this book is that all the chapters are subdivided into a lot shorter sections and they can be reference worthy. But I must admit that something that I really disliked in this book is that it contains filthy language, filthy words, it's strewn around, and apparently this was also a part of the working culture. So the author has also clarified his views and justified to say the use of such words in a workplace. Apart from this, there are also a few places where I felt the author sounded a bit conceited. Like he claims that now he's the management guru. And also the general tone of the book feels like he has a lot of attitude. But well, maybe he's right in having an attitude because he's successfully sold his business and he's now a noteworthy large investor in other tech companies. He's also shared some nice sides of him, and one such instance is that he highlights the human side of himself. For example, when his company EDS was going to take over another company called Tangram's CFO, whose name was John, was diagnosed with brain cancer. And he did not have insurance coverage because of this acquisition. So although John was a stranger to Ben decided to pay for his health costs by finding another budget in the company. So if I were to conclude, this is a good read, especially for founders and CEOs, and even aspiring CEOs, I can say. It's filled with many anecdotes, but it's all about the author's experiences and his views. He's also shared very good insights from the late Bill Campbell, the $1 trillion coach I mentioned, Jim Collins, and also Mark Zuckerberg and others. On the flip side, I thought not everything is really relevant to all. And like I mentioned, I did find it a bit boring in few places. It's good to consider his views as his perspectives and apply prudence in whatever you think is relevant in applying to your business. And lastly, if you're still wondering why this book was actually given to all the new employees of the large company that I was mentioning, it's because he was an investor in their companies, and that's why it was being given. So yes, thanks. So that was the summary of this book. Now let's pick their brains to see what they actually think about this book. Okay.